So getting back to how Mouse ruined comics.
Okay.
All right, 30 seconds. Your 30 seconds are up. No more boomer music.
Well, folks, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages. But let's face it, there's probably not a lot of kids watching. Anyway, welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarchy. We've got a change up today. We're entirely out of our typical box, our little normal ballywick here on the Mattriarchy. I have brought on Mr. X and Neostar Productions, as some know him, and with that to talk about the genre of Tokusatsu, Japanese-influenced superheroes, because these guys make them. How about that?
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on, guys. And for Mr. X, this is the first time you've ever been on the show. I don't even know if you've ever even seen my show, which is fine. But
I've actually seen a few. I tend to lurk in some streams, especially this time of the evening, but I've definitely caught a few. So I know who you are.
Excellent. Well, I am something of a known quantity. So that's how that goes. And Neostar, you've been on before.
Yeah, a couple times.
Couple times. It's been a while though. How have you been?
Well, yeah, have my ups and downs, but I'm still hanging in there.
Good.
Plus,
Well, I'll tell you what. So
now,
one
so
of the things that
whole different change of pace.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I cut you off. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying. Plus, I'm working in the day now, so I kind of had a complete schedule overhaul, which is why a lot of folks haven't seen me as often.
Oh yeah. So, but anyway, one of the reasons I wanted to invite you guys on specifically is I recently splashed out on a couple of mini comics provided by each of you guys, but also by our mutual acquaintance, Mrs. H. And I wanted to dig in and see what this thing was all about. And I realized there's so much that I don't know. Now, one of our regular guests, the Metal, who is in the chat, hello Metal, and also Flying Saucer, who I have not seen you in a few weeks, maybe? I don't know, but thanks for coming in, man. But the Metal is knowledgeable of, let's face it, almost all things. That guy knows lots of stuff. Like I wouldn't even, he knows stuff I didn't even know there was to know. It's what? But he's very familiar with Japanese comics, very deep read on it. But even he has struggled to help me understand some of the genre elements in Tokusatsu stuff that people find so appealing, so interesting, right? And I think it's my age. I think that's part of it. Is it started getting big in America when I was already nearly an adult. So Metal has said I am not knowledgeable about my schedule today, and that's why I'm in the chat.
That explains one thing.
Yes, I'd hoped he could join us too, but that's fine. If you can't, you can't. That's the way it goes. But well, I would like to say before we go on, I realized there was some background information. I'm interrupting myself entirely to send well wishes out there through the ether to Cartoonicus, who is traveling, and hopefully he comes back safely to us all in a few weeks. But he's incommunicado for a little bit as he's taking care of some outside real world business that involves the road and the friendly skies and all that kind of stuff. So if you guys out there in internet land had come hoping that I was inflicting something new on Cartoonicus, not today. So
maybe tomorrow.
2 weeks. I'm hoping. I'm hoping to harass him again in 2 weeks. So that's one of my love languages, is giving people grief. But so let me put the question to you guys. First of all, what is it about the Japanese hero genre that drew you guys in, that really made you guys think this is the kind of thing that I want to do?
Oh, that is quite a way to lead our conversation here. Just a preface, I've kind of been around this genre without really even knowing what it was for the most part. Like, yeah, I was one of those kids where Power Rangers was the big thing before I knew what like the big wigs were, like the Super Sentais, the Kamen Riders, the Ultramans, the Garos, the Dojengers, everything like that.
The beef fighters, the Metal Heroes.
Oh yeah,
the Gridmans.
But if I was to put it succinctly, like one big thing that really drew me in when I sat down and really started thinking up of what Asterman would eventually become was just how sincere it is. You can sit down and watch any sort of series, be it any of the ones I listed or even some of the ones I didn't, and it takes its story seriously, even if it's like sort of a jokey series. It takes its premise and it runs with it. You don't feel like they're kind of stringing you along or things are just kind of forced for the sake of doing them. Everybody's enthusiastic. They put their everything into it, and it really sucks you in.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's actually really interesting, because that's exactly the frame of reference that I appreciated about comics, about American superhero comics from, like, say, 2003 back, right? Even, and we a few weeks ago we talked on the show about how superhero comics, there have always been a few elements within American superhero comics of characters that are kind of making fun of the premises, right? And there was Not Brand Ek from Marvel. There was a whole bunch of stuff that Mad Magazine did. There was Herbie, the Fat Fury. There are all these satirical characters that exist within the hero genre in American superheroes, but those things were almost there to punctuate the conceits of the superhero genre, where things are just they take themselves seriously. Right? Even though you're looking at men who can fly or dress up as bats or whatever, you forgive that silliness for the sake of the somber tone in the stories. The levity that presented there was in some ways like a release valve, and allows you to really really allows people to buy into the more serious premises of superhero comics. And so it's really interesting for you to talk about the sincerity that you perceived within this other genre. It was weird for me because like I said, I was pretty much already grown when Power Rangers became a thing, and its various American trade-offs like Big Bad Beetleborgs and those other series that had the same kind of feel. I didn't perceive the sincerity within it. It may have been because I was already a jaded Gen X kid, right? But what I could see on the printed page, I didn't feel didn't translate into the television screen. But I found it interesting in the but I found it interesting that was your perception and the thing that you found interesting in it. That's cool. I dig it. Okay.
You're good.
Yeah. How about you, Neo Star? What was it that drew you in? Did we lose you, Neo?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was directed at me. Well, with Tokusatsu, I kind of noticed that it was like live action superhero shows, which I admittedly did not see a lot of at first when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like one of my first exposures to it was shows like Power Rangers and Beetleborgs, which turned out to have actually been English localized versions of the shows that originally came from Japan, and notably geared notably geared to a more family oriented market, but I still had a really enjoyable and even more entertaining when I finally got a chance to check out like both the original variations of the franchises. So
Yeah,
suffice to say, so suffice to say, they both kind of resonate in their own way, while still keeping the original intention of the show.
So that actually Metal brings up an interesting point. He says, speaking from the peanut gallery, and once again, thank you. Tokusatsu is not really a genre per se. It translates into anything that is special photography or special effects on TV. Henshin, which means transformation, applies most to these titles. And that actually is one of the questions that I had, because, of course, I've been distantly familiar with your creation Neostar. I mean Neostar's your creation Rizerman for a number of years, and some of the stuff that you've talked about. And you refer to him as Henshin Hero, a Rizerman, and I had not heard the term before you used it, and I've tried looking it up, and the only thing that comes from that is the word transformation, and so which doesn't make a lot of sense to me in the context. Is it just the the costuming scenes that give it that that Henshin title, or is there something beyond that?
Well, once upon a time when I was first trying to develop Rizerman into an indie comics character, I caught myself trying to be clever and going for alliteration with the title Henshin Hero Rizerman and the transforming hero, which I suppose does have dual meanings, and before he became Rizerman, he was just Shiny Crew's private detective, but part of his origin was sort of being made into Rizerman, so to speak. So he, in a sense, was transformed into a crime-fighting superhero.
And that concept of the whole costumed identity, of course, is central to the DNA of American heroes, right? Of the costumed hero, the superhero. It's intrinsic with that, and even goes into some of the pulp characters, Zorro and Green Hornet and the Shadow. Of course, the fun thing about the Shadow novels is the Shadow didn't have just a secret identity; he had like 6. in addition to his whole cast of associates and everything, all the agents. And so the idea that you'd have that kind of that not just that you would find appeal in that, but that this other superhero genre would mirror that secret identity aspect. I mean, that seems like a natural, right? One of the things that I've talked about this a little bit on the show, but I find it so fascinating. If you go back and look at like 200 years of art history, there's this arc of Japan having a product or a style or something, and then France borrowing that style and modifying it through European sensibilities, and then America taking that and stretching it to its logical extreme, which then turns around and influences Japanese art, which is then borrowed by France, which is then stretched and broken by Americans.
It's the circle of spin.
It is, and it's one of those things where whenever I see somebody goes off on like manga and anime is stupid, but American comics are great, and American animation is the thing you should pay attention to, and don't pay attention to Japan, and why I'm like, you don't even like you really never looked at art at all.
Heck, even Spider-Man had a Tokusatsu show at one point. Heck, it was one of the
Yup.
first, actually.
Well, I mean, like you wouldn't have Astro Boy without Mickey Mouse, and you wouldn't have Mickey Mouse without the French Art Nouveau. I mean, that's really kind of how that shakes out. But so for Mr. X, for your perspective in looking at Asterman, and of course, you were telling me off panel that his proper name is Asterman Geist, which is another one of these things that I don't understand. I want to ask a little more about. But when you were looking at this concept of the armored hero, what was it? In addition to just finding it cool and interesting and being part of your formative like of hero stories, what were the things that like drew you into that style?
There's a lot that kind of goes into it because it's bounced around in several different iterations. To be honest with you, Asterman started as a concept when I was in college back in 2018, and I was in a very different spot in my life. I had just gotten into the genre more colloquially online by watching some seasons of Kamen Rider when I wasn't doing homework and things like that, but I myself was a bit more of a downer person. Like I had just come off of a lot of life-changing things and was pretty down on myself. And Alan himself is kind of emblematic of that, at least early on. What drew me to this particular genre is the type of, just for lack of a better word, this Henshin hero sort of story is it lends itself to a long-spanning developmental arc that you can see through the characters in and out of suit. As Asterman continues and Alan develops and he gets stronger, you see it through his forms, you see it through his actions outside the suit, how he presents himself, what he's into as you learn more about him, and as the threats continue to escalate and get more complex. And you see this all the time in the genre. Like, take any season of Kamen Rider, as things escalate and demand more of the titular hero, he gains a new form or learns how to bring it out and see how the world around him changes him. The biggest one I would bring up, just for anyone who is looking to get into the genre, would be Kuga, which you can actually watch on YouTube. It is the first Heisei season, and I'll get into that in a little bit, just to determine like what those are.
You got to explain what the heck that means, man.
Absolutely.
I speak one language.
I'll kind of do it now, just so it's easier. For Kamen Rider specifically, and a lot of toku shows kind of borrow this naming convention, the eras are indicative of the eras in Japan that get their namesake from the Japanese emperor at the time. Like, originally, when Kamen Rider began, that was under Showa, until he eventually died. I want to say I don't know this one off the top of my head, like around the 80s or 90s, and then it went over into the Heisei era. And eventually now, where we are in 2025, with the Reiwa era. And so a lot of fans compile shows into those eras because it helps differentiate the type of stories that are told, the type of technology that was available at the time, the limitations, and even the type of storytelling style. Like, for instance, with Kamen Rider, like if you take Kamen Rider 1971, it will look ridiculously different than something from, say, 2003 or 4. So with like Fies or something.
So let me ask this. Here's something I don't even know, right? I mean, I saw Kamen Rider. I didn't ever watch it, but I saw it that it was on, like I think it was Fox back in the late 90s, and the action figures were being sold at Walmart and all this kind of stuff. But in Japan, like, has this been on the air consistently since the 70s?
Kamen Rider specifically, no.
Okay.
Kamen Rider had a break for almost 10 years after Kamen Rider Black RX. It wasn't on air as a TV series until Kuga. And that was actually the first mainline TV series that was a thing after the creator Shotaro Ishinomori's passing.
Okay.
He also was the one that created Super Sentai as well. But there was this break of 10 years where we only got like TV movies, like I believe JZO and Shin, and that was it.
So give me the years on that, so I can build this up in my brain. What are we looking at? When did like Super Sentai and Kamen Rider start, and how long did they run before this break? If you can remember,
Sentai never stopped. I think Sentai started like 1975, or 74. Kamen Rider began in 1971, and I believe stopped, I want to say around 88, like 87, 88. And there was this break of 10 years. And then it came back with the Heisei era with Kuga around the year 2000. No. 1999.
Okay.
I believe it came out in 1999. I was getting that mixed up with Akito, which came out after Kuga. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's actually really interesting. So I'm sorry, man.
I'll just agree. That was a pretty solid estimate of the time frame with Kamen Rider. I was still trying to remember the era years myself, as we were talking about it.
Okay. Well, it's also really interesting too, because you have this resurgence or the relaunch of the new Kamen Rider series, but that post dates the popularity of Kamen Rider becoming a thing here in America, right?
That's a whole can of worms.
Well, yeah, of course it would be, but the interesting thing about that is like that's also
we had Kamen Rider.
Well, that thing kind of happened with Doctor Who, in some ways. Doctor Who had become like it had been a thing in Britain, and it kind of died off a little toward the end of the 80s, and there was a resurgence of popularity here in America, and the BBC had a cable network, and they said, hey, we can sell this for sure. They put a ton of money into the relaunch of Doctor Who, and it's still on the air today. No opinion about quality. I don't care about Doctor Who at all. But it's interesting that the larger market, when it was a local product and then became a worldwide product, and the market encouraged more production of that. It's just interesting to see that happen to something I wasn't super aware of. So that's interesting.
Oh yeah, you'd be amazed what different shows and franchises have international appeal. You just back in the day.
And so Kamen, and I also hadn't realized that Kamen Rider predated Super Sentai. Like that I did not realize at all. So that's really interesting as well.
Well, that and they were both made by the same guy.
Yeah, well, that I also hadn't realized. So now, one of the things that from the chat that Metal was scolding me, which is fine, that Kodai Hero is the one you want to specifically talk about if you're talking about superhero shows, as opposed to other special effects shows like Godzilla, that kind of thing. Ultraman is a Henshin character, but he's the pinnacle example of Kodai Hero. Now, I have seen a little bit of Ultraman, right? I ended up picking up the first season out of a discount bin just to see what it was all about, and it is fascinating. It's fascinating as an element. I guess especially because it seems to play not only on like the same many of the same tropes as superheroes, but it also seems to play in like the same sandbox as like the Godzilla pictures, and as in the 50s. I don't even know what you call this. There were several like science fiction shows in the 50s and 60s, or films, I should say, in Japan, that were translated. Prince of Space, and Attack of the Neptune Men, and there was a series, Mighty Jack, that ran, and I think that was in the 70s. But they have a lot of the same element, like plot elements of Ultraman, but they're very much science fiction and not sort of the hero genre stuff. But Ultraman seems to take this thing and say, well, what if we, instead of just fighting, instead of, international conspiracies or normal size, human-sized alien invasions, we're dealing with this monster, these giant monster kaiju level things, which of course I thought was wild. I wondered. I was never into, as a young person, I was never into kaiju stuff. Right, Godzilla was like a big deal in the 70s and 80s. Wasn't something that I was particularly keen on for whatever reason. I wasn't like I was against it. It just was like, well, that's sort of a thing that people can be into or whatever.
Godzilla as a kid.
My wife loves kaiju, so I've seen a bunch of Godzilla movies. But my first real exposure to it before that happened was Mystery Science Theater, and the Godzilla pictures and oh, come on, I'm spacing on the giant turtle.
Gamera.
Yes. But of course, like I said, those the monsters were one thing. With Ultraman, we have a hero who is, a worthy foe to the giant monsters. But man, those giant monsters, just even when you get on later into the Power Ranger stuff, and I'm not sure how much of the giant mechs and monsters made their way into the original Super Sentai stuff. But they're definitely there in the American versions. And what are you? I don't know what to, other than to say that I'm observing that. I guess, what is your take on the giant monster element? Is that something you guys want to incorporate in your stories, or is that even something you guys are keen on?
What?
Oh no, you can go first, Neil.
Technically, I have been. Technically, I have been and working on a superhero character that fits more along the lines of the Ultraman stuff. Where we basically have somebody transform into a giant in order to fend off the giant monsters that show up to attack, or in the case of my story, alien invaders sending giant monsters as part of their conquest plans. More along the lines of Ultraman and the sort of lesser known other giant superhero, the Zone Fighter, which was basically Toho's own Ultraman and sort of character, like basically the Ultraman of the Godzilla universe.
Okay.
I can't say too much, but there is a character in Asterman that does show up. I want to say around Volume 2, that does kind of wink and nod at the Ultraman concept of like having a giant hero running around.
Ooh, nice.
So people can expect to see that in the future. Aside from that, I don't think it'll show up too much, but it is a thing that will exist in a limited capacity.
Okay.
Fair enough.
That's, and I don't know if you guys were ever aware of the Sporkman character, the indie hero.
Yeah,
he was one of my first.
Yeah, I think I've got a copy of it over here. I'm not going to look it up right now, but their second book, the Sporkman, I guess is their miniseries, Sporkman in Japan, has this idea that all of the Japanese monster movie tropes exist within Japan in their universe, and so Sporkman fights giant robots and things like that. And I found that really fun. But the other thing is that it was very much influenced by 70s and 80s Japanimation stuff. And so it doesn't have so much of the Kamen Rider Super Sentai style to it. Seems to take a lot more from like Voltron and Robotech, which makes sense because I mean those guys are roughly they're roughly my age, and so that would have been our first exposure to that kind of stuff. I was talking to Mike Hutchison, who's a regular on the show. The other day we were chatting about Battle of the Planets, and I've never seen Battle of the Planets, but that was something that he'd seen when he's a little older than me, and something he'd seen coming up, which also falls into that Japanese hero thing. One of the ways they take that, but one of the things I thought I wanted to ask you guys about too, that I don't necessarily understand. I mean, it's obviously a thing, but in Japanese pop heroes, right, superheroes, that kind of thing, one of the things that is way more common there than here, or even in hero stories in France. Now, France doesn't have superheroes the same way that America and Japan do, so much anyway. There's a little bit, but not hugely. But one of the things that Japan has is these themed hero teams that is super common, right?
Super common. That's an interesting name.
Right? So you get like the where their costumes are very similar, or like you have the heroes, the sailors, Sailor Scouts.
The Sailor Scouts.
Yeah, where they're all wearing the same dress in different colors, right? Or that kind of thing. Or you have like the where the uniforms are all identical, and they've got the same, like in the first season of Power Rangers, they've got like the same helmets, but they're just a little bit different, so you can tell them apart. Not necessarily even in profile, which I thought was really, really strange. And while themed teams exist in American comics, they're not usually not in the same way, right? Where like the Fantastic Four, they've all got similar uniforms, but their body shapes are also different. That it just doesn't feel the same as the Power Rangers or whatever. I guess do you know what's up with that? I guess is what I'm saying, because like one of the first examples of this Henshin stuff is Kamen Rider, and Kamen Rider's a guy, and I understand there's like a legacy of Kamen Riders through the years, but it's still like a guy, right? But
right,
he's Kamen Riders. Oh, hold on a sec.
But from at least from the introduction of Super Sentai, there just seems to be in whenever people bring it up, it's like the red one or the blue one or the green one or the pink one, and across properties that share similar like stylistic to it. And I don't know what's up with that.
Well,
I think it has to do to the baseline formula. Since they were both made by the same guy, and Sentai has always been sort of an ensemble cast, the teammates all get the powers from the same source in every single iteration, really. What ends up happening between seasons, other than like the theme or the motifs changing and the type of story that they're going for, you tend to have different roles being occupied by the hero of the different color. Like red is almost usually like very headstrong and fiery and super tough. You have the girls that kind of have several variations. They've gotten very varied, for lack of a better word, in more recent ones. Then you usually have like the blue, who's more calm or level-headed or has a rivalry with one of them. And then the infamous like sixth or extra ranger or hero shows up, and they have a wildly different dynamic to shake things up that really moves things along. A lot of properties that borrow inspiration from Super Sentai or even Cyborg 009, which Ishimori also did, all kind of take that and have their own spin on it, like we see with the Sailor Scouts. Like all the different girls have all their different personalities that is accentuated by the type of powers that they control. And you even kind of see this in even to its own extent in a more recent property that I think we're all familiar with, that being Common America.
Yeah,
is the best like modern example.
Well, and I was actually going to bring Common America up because it definitely fits that genre type within the especially the girl centric magical girl, Sailor Moon kind of thing. But the other thing that I've always found that I find really interesting is that Tim and Mark do. First of all, I think they do a great job of like taking these what I know about, and it's not a lot, to be completely fair, but what I know about these Japanese character like archetypes and the American hero archetypes, and blending them together in a way that is it's got this cross genre appeal. I mean, this cross cultural appeal. And to see the amount of success that they've had with taking this property that was very much designed for an American audience of weebs and take it over to Japan and show how the things that weebs love about comics are the same things that actual like people growing up in Japanese culture love about comics. And I think that's really cool. Which, you know, let's face it, it kind of want to go back to what I was talking earlier. This, you know, Japan, France, America, Japan, France, America circle. It's complete. You know,
the circle is now complete.
It keeps going there. So on with that. How is everyone? Garth Ovstein says, "How's everyone doing today?" I think pretty good. Is that fair? Everybody good?
Yeah, a little tired from work, but pretty good.
Yeah.
Can't complain.
So, Flying Saucer asked the question: what current examples keep you excited? What's on your watch? What does your watch list look like these days? And I'm assuming he's talking to you guys because I don't watch things.
Yeah,
that's only partially true.
There's a lot of what's funny about this is that as things have moved along, you're starting to see a lot more Toku or Henshin Hero-esque like anime and shows pop up in recent memory. Like you have some of the more blatant stuff like Futo PI, which is an adaptation of a manga sequel to one of the Kamen Rider seasons, Kamen Rider Double. That came out like I want to say like a year or two ago. But then you have Goku Loser Ranger in some of the more mecha themed sort of things. You have SSSS Gridman and its sequel Dyna Zenon. And then you have the obvious answers of like, you know, the current Sentai, the current Rider, or the current Ultraman, which in my case is Gav, and I love it. It's awesome. You somehow managed to make a Kamen Rider with a motif of like snacks. And somehow tell a very emotionally gripping story about like forgiveness and addiction and trauma, and you just make it work. And that's one of the other things I love about this genre. Like now, me personally, Asterman isn't really big on the whole gimmicks. It leans more towards like the Heisei-esque, where you have you have like themed suits and power-ups like that, but not so much like the Reiwa era does, where you have like a ridiculous amount of forms and it's like super like merch oriented. But the funny thing is, you can have ridiculous concepts and make them work with very stellar writing, and I think it's really shining through in some of the stuff coming out right now, especially with Gav. Oh man, it's really good.
Mrs. H says snacks are addiction. This is once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, the bad snacks are made of people, so.
Sorry, bro.
Oh my gosh. How about you, Neo? Are there particular shows that are on your must watch list?
Oh man. Remember how I told you earlier how I switched from the night shift to the day shift lately? Well, for the longest time, I almost didn't have the time or energy to indulge a lot. So I ended up missing a good portion of the later half of the Heisei era and pretty much all the Rishi era. In fact, I kind of dived back into the more older franchises among Tokusatsu. In fact, I even picked up from Antarctic Press the Spectrum Man heroes, which has like several of the Tokusatsu that came back during like probably I want to say like the late 70s, early 90s sort of whatever era. In fact, Rizerman himself, my own character is kind of a nod to like Ishinomori's older Tokusatsu manga before they became TV show.
Okay. Well, and
so
I've thought about that with your Rizerman design, because he definitely has like that late 60s through the early 80s Japanimation look to the way the helmet lays out, the antennae, that kind of thing, as opposed to the Asterman design that you have there on your profile, which has those sleek, a lot of detail lines, the trim pieces, and all that kind of stuff. That Asterman has. It definitely, to me, feels more late 90s, early aughts in terms of its design. But that actually segues into one of the other questions that I had about this Henshin hero genre, or whatever you want to call it. The armored suits, right, with the full head helmets, seems to be it's such a big part of the look, right?
Usually, yeah.
And it's weird to me, coming from that very American hero aspect, where Superman, no mask, tights, Batman, maybe some light armor, but you can see he's got the
cowl,
the visible chin, right? Where you have a lot of these, or even if you get into more some of the 90s tactical designs, where they still look there's a lot of cloth in it, but or even Spider-Man's design, where he's got a full face mask, but the giant eyes are used, right, to give the facial expressions, right? So even though you've got a blank expression on the eyes, it doesn't stay that way, right? The comic artist cheats and makes the eyes have expression to them, right? So they can get those emotions across. But with these especially the Super Sentai style characters, where they've got the full face masks, it I don't want to say it eliminates their personality. It means that things in the story have to move in a way despite the physical limitations of the design, right?
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of body language and vocal expressions there.
Which makes sense in a TV show in a lot of ways, right? And especially because I would think that the armor style would mean that you'd have less worry. Less, like, because it's at live action, so the armor style would seem like something that would be more easily replicable scene to scene with less like special effects work, right? But when you're looking at this, as opposed to being drawn, you can cheat a lot with drawing, right? Like it's talking about Spider-Man's eyes. But when you guys are thinking about that level of design, what are the intentions you're using with the way you guys? Because I know you guys are writers rather than artists, but you've worked with artists and you've shaped the oh my goodness, my nose started itching. Oh.
Don't worry, H. I'm going to bring that up. Don't worry about it.
But where you've oh, hey, Metal.
Wow, genki desu ka?
See, knowing things I don't even know there is to know. But when you guys are thinking about
good evening,
design
how are
and
you?
thinking about these sort of like very covered shapes, what are the ideas, the things that you are appealing to? What are the things you like about those design elements that you want to use and that kind of thing?
There is quite a bit of difference in working with a story like this in comic form as opposed to live action. As H is alluding to in the comments, a lot of ways that they're able to display emotion in those shows is the suit actor direction. Because the guy who plays the character in the show isn't the same actor that wears the suit. That goes to a suit actor. And so with the way that they move the suit around, or the way that the camera zooms in or out in certain angles, music presentation, all of that comes together to really have the character emote when they're transformed. There is a very infamous little skit from Kamen Rider Wizard where he, in one of his forms, is actually doing laundry, and you can actually see him just hand washing this bunch of clothes. And it cuts to like the corner of his eye. He's like moving his head and just looking at his side, and then he notices there's a full-on washing machine over there. And then the music just stops. His head is just right there. It zooms in. He's looking down at what he's doing, and just slowly looks right back up at the washing machine. And then it just cuts to him washing on the washing machine. Like, that sort of thing is how you can emote with a full-on suit without seeing their face. In comics, it's up to us as the writers to work with the artists, you know, whether it be like the shading, the coloring, the amount of damage that's on the suit, the sort of body language that's going on from panel to panel, scene to scene, to capture that same feeling of letting you know, even though you can't see their face. And sometimes we can decide to let you see their face in the middle of a fight, because even in the actual shows, there are moments where, you know, like a ranger's helmet can get like destroyed, or their helmet just flies off because they were just in a big explosion.
Or in some of the newer ones, they will do like a zoom in similar to like Tony Stark inside his suit, where like they will go in on the face. It's not as common, but you do see it these days.
Well, and that actually that whole thing reminds me of, you know, the early Ditko Spider-Man, where they started having, you know, that cliche where Spider-Man's face, you know, half of it's Spider-Man, the other half's Peter Parker, right? It's Peter Parker in his day life doing something, and you know, Norman Osborn shows up at school, right, or whatever, and so you've got my spider sense is tingling, and so you get this Peter trying to deal with it visually to represent Peter dealing with his real life as Peter and his hero life as Spider-Man, and how these are intersecting uncomfortably.
Well, I got another example about how maybe you could wrap your brain around this too, right?
Okay.
So imagine that in like Japanese filming, they never gave up vaudeville, right? Like we did, right? So like in a lot of our early stuff where you had like the vaudeville techniques, they were pretty much taking theater stage techniques and they were putting it into filming. And a lot of even these tropes date back to the kabuki theater in Japan, and a lot of the movements too. So they're acting on screen the same way you would if you were on stage, and you needed to let people who are far in the audience know how the character's emoting by using body language and extreme movements and stuff like that.
You know, so that actually makes a lot of sense. That actually makes a lot of sense, because you think about like the Marx Brothers, right? And the Marx Brothers were all about that stage performance level of humor, right? But the thing about it was, though, is that because they were a comedy team, and because Groucho had that ridiculously good presence of his, it's just you can't even get around it. Can't even frame it. That his performance was able to persist because he was able to deal at the camera, right? So let me back up a little bit to compare. So Laurel and Hardy were strictly vaudeville, right? All of their bits were vaudeville and silent film, right? In that space. And while Laurel and Hardy were always funny, there was a point at which they couldn't grow beyond their toolbox, and then they kind of stopped being as popular, right? And so what we ended up having, right, is that the Marx Brothers could transcend it because they could work at the camera. They could get up close. They could do all those things in a way that the Laurel and Hardy couldn't, right? Bob Hope was another one that was able to make the shift because he could work in the intimate space of the camera in a way that Laurel and Hardy couldn't. And Charlie Chaplin couldn't either. for that matter, right? Which is, once again, no shade on Chaplin at all. It's just that once they moved beyond the talkies, and once they were moved and they started getting the intimate camera, that's not something Chaplin could move beyond, right? So so looking at that from a comedic perspective and thinking about how those same kind of drawing aspects or should I say acting aspects affect performance, affect filming, that makes a lot of sense about how Japanese theater still has an impact on the screen in ways that American theater doesn't have an impact on the screen. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So, so in my question about the white armor, Metal, do you have anything to add on that topic?
On the Y armor?
Yes.
Because of the history of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Also slightly into the Kabuki theater because of their armor is more of like the theatrical version of armor that, say, a samurai or warrior would have, as opposed to the realistic one, because it's difficult to do things on stage in realistic armor. So you might have like a lighter or a more cartoonish version of the armor that still looks like it at a distance, but is more practical when you're wearing it. So a lot of this stuff just kind of evolves. But you would, if you had this same trend growing in, say, Europe, you probably would also have their heroes wearing armor because of the history of armor to Europe that you don't exactly have in America. While we have a history of Westerns, and our greatest entertainment pastime before things started getting recorded was the circus, which is why most of our superheroes look like they come out of the circus.
Well, and not just that, like strongmen and wrestlers, right? So you had
but those were all part of the circus troupe too. Like you would have wrestlers involved in that. Yeah.
So you'd use the same kind of garb, that heavy lifting garb, like the large weight belts for powerlifting, and even if you're looking at not traveling entertainers but folk athletes and folk competitions, they would still wear the same kind of outfits as professional strongmen, because that's just what was considered technological supportive gear at the time. I hadn't thought about that. Well, and that comes back to one of the ongoing conversations that Twitless and I often have, is this idea of the superhero costume versus the tactical look, right?
Yeah.
I happen to have a real soft spot for the era of the pouch, right? In the 90s heroes with all the pouches. I mean, of course, it gets to an extreme, but there's a certain amount of that I think makes a ton of sense. And Twitless is like, no, classic superhero costumes are the thing. But are they really different? I mean, that's what we're talking about here with American.
No, they're not.
Yeah. So,
and it's also like, you notice sometimes you will have like a Kyodai hero or something that might have something on his belt, like a holster for his gun or whatever. But for the most part, it seems like they just pull their weapons out of thin air. Even that kind of goes back to the Japanese theater, because even like our modern idea of the ninja is actually the stagehands from the Japanese theater, who'd wear all black so they wouldn't be seen. Eventually, comedically, that there'd be like meta jokes where the stagehands get pulled in. Even like the first masked hero was a stagehand who became the hero. There's like all this like metatextual stuff going back. But if you did have like a samurai who was the hero of a play, he wouldn't have to have his sword on him at all time, because that'd be very difficult for the play. So it would kind of like magically appear as a black clad stagehand comes out of the shadow, hands him the sword, and then disappears. It's also kind of a reason why like these heroes just like magic their weapons out of nowhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had to stop thinking about that. Well, that's one of the things that and Mr. X and Neil, let me know what you think on this too. The concept of the transformation scene is one of those things that I think is intriguing, but it's also like not without place in Western hero, especially film, right? Superhero films, whether it's the 60s George Reeves Superman, I mean the 50s George Reeves Superman on TV, quick changing into Superman, right? Or Batman, going down the pole to become Batman, or Wonder Woman doing the big spin, right? And suddenly it's that. Wonder Woman. those are the same or similar transformations to the anime and Henshin hero transformation scenes that those scenes get used again and again. So yeah, those are some common lines that I'm putting together. I might be coming to understand this whole genre in ways I didn't think of before. So,
oh yeah, Forrester makes a good point with the whole Shinkenger thing, where it's pretty much.
All right, Forrester.
Oh, that's a whole thing.
Yeah, very cool, very cool.
Yeah, and then obviously they kind of like removed it in the American version, but because maybe people just wouldn't understand.
We don't like to talk about samurai parts.
Yeah, I don't even understand. I mean, that's one of the subsequent series of things, right? So
yes, Shinkenger is pretty far off. It's semi modern. Like it came out around the turn of like the 2010s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think it was 2012. I think it was right around there. No wait, I think it was 2010. You're right. 2012 is when the American version hit, I think.
Yeah, because of the whole soft reboot thing after Saban got the rights back. But yeah, the art of transformation. Now, the most basic reason is because, well, it kind of saves time in animation. If they drag it out, that's where Sailor Moon gets the whole infamous thing where they take a whole minute to transform the whole cast.
Well, I mean, you get and even in He-Man, that was a factor, right?
So and you get to reuse it every time. You don't have to freshly animate it.
Between Prince Adam and He-Man itself.
Thank you, stock animation.
Yeah, stock animation, absolutely.
Yeah, and then there are other things like quick changes.
Was literally a quick change on a single page. Like it was like 3 panels if you go back to the manga, where she was like, before the change, there was like a bright light, and then she's Sailor Moon. That's how it was in the manga. They're like, no, we got to drag this out.
Free animation. Well, not free. It costs a lot of money, but
well, you pay for
it's free the more you reuse it.
Fair enough. Looking at you, Toei. There's a lot that goes into the transformation. It's not just about saving time or money. There's a lot that you can kind of say with the character in how they go about it, especially if you have multiple people in your series transforming. Like for me, I have at least 3. There's more than 3, but like there's 3 main ones. But Alan is like the main one. Like the way the armor comes on, the way they present themselves, the body language, their catchphrase, their whatever device they use, the background elements, everything kind of helps illustrate the type of person and the type of hero you're really dealing with each one. And you can even see this, within the various themes and motifs that get reused in Sentai, or the different types of Kamen Riders, because they're very singular in a sense, but
very true.
Between their motif, it tells you a lot about who they are or how they like to fight or the type of person that they really are. So there's a lot that goes into it, and you can even do quick changes where if you just want to get right into the action, whether it's a comic form or even in the show, you could just have them just quick change, like you said, just bright flash of light, boom, transformed. That way, when you do see the full transformation again, it kind of highlights like the seriousness. You do see that sometimes. Yes, H, thank you.
So, this is a good time. I think this is a good time to pivot just a little bit. So I feel like I've gained a new understanding for some of the things that I did not before. And I do want to say one thing that's really interesting is I feel like part of my kind of bridging the gap too is seeing how, like, I love, and you can call me a normie if you want, I don't care, I love My Hero Academia, right?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I love it. It's great. But like My Hero leans a lot on American superhero tropes, but there's also these non-American things that fit in alongside of it. And so I think that's part of. I think it was preparing me for this conversation. We're looking for those intersections, those Venn diagrams, so to speak. But I've talked a little bit about that I'd read these little comics, and both of you guys have crowdfunding campaigns that are going on right now. That people, you can check in the description. You can go purchase comics written by these fine gentlemen. And both of these books were drawn by the incomparable Mrs. H, and I'm not just saying that because I want her to draw more pictures for me. It's true. You can't compare. Can't be done. But one of the things that I wanted to go ahead and take some time to do is that there is an animation that Mrs. H did as an advert for one of these campaigns. So let me get that loaded up, and we can just take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just gotta get the right screen here, and here, hang on. I should have been doing this while we were talking, but I didn't.
Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah. It'll be in just a second here. I swear, any minute. It's not like I'm just.
While it's loading, another thing I want to point out is for anybody who, for some reason, just doesn't get the appeal of this stuff, and maybe you never will. There's a thing about taste. A lot of this stuff makes more and more sense the more you know about the history of Japan. Like, some people can never get to, like, why do heroes always shout out the name of their move in Japanese things? That's kind of weird. It's like, well, that's because samurai actually used to name their finishing blows, especially if it was one that won them an award, and they would shout it in one-on-one duels. Because most of war during the Age of Samurai was like, if there was 100 people on the battlefield, it would actually be 50 one-on-one duels because of their honor system and how they played war.
Yeah. Well, and that part I didn't find as that necessarily strange, and I blame my old media, right? Like Popeye had names for his punches, right? Stuff like that. So, and in old movies and in old books, you'll occasionally see the fighter say things like, it's the final wallop for you. Stuff like that.
Yeah. But it's like almost anything that seems a little weird about Japanese media, there's usually like an actual history reason for it, and it's just that's their culture.
That's fun. That's fun. Okay. I think we're ready to go. I'm going to reload the page and see if it loads it did. It reloaded the video. I watched it before the stream, and so I wasn't sure it was going to go on there. So here we go. Are we ready? Is everybody prepared?
Yes, and now our feature presentation, ladies and gentlemen.
It's right here, though. It's on. I gotta. Ooh, good. Fortunately, I switched the thing over. If only American wrestlers. Yeah, there you go. And that's actually another part of it too. Is sports announcers do some of the heavy lifting. Okay, on with the video.
This is Jeremy Summers with a special report. 2 weeks after Asterman overcame White Claw and defended the Brass Vessel of Solomon, Alan Walker enjoys a relaxing day on the Brimwood beaches with close friend June. But their sunning is stifled by out-of-town reporters and the big story they chase. Can Asterman and Rizerman overcome this colossal cretation of Dr. Wargo, a task neither can do alone? Find out in the fast-paced adventure complete in 16 black and white pages. This is Vanessa Perez, live in Brentwood, Florida. Show support during the month of June. Back the campaign and receive bundled deals and exclusive items. Bonus items unlock the more backers participate and funds are raised.
And that's the thing.
We did the thing with the thing.
We did the thing, and it was swell.
Oh yeah, no, you can't see. I have the biggest grin on my face right now.
No,
fantastic.
It is great, and the campaign is funded, so it's definitely going to happen. The books are absolutely coming out to folks, but you out there in internet land, you can get your own copy. Links in the description below. And this, of course, like they said in one of the introductions, it takes place just shortly after this other little book here, right? And Mr. X, remind me, I cannot recall, my brain's not working, the title of this particular little story.
Yes. The first mini book that I did with Mrs. H, the full title is Asterman, Geist, Creed. And this new campaign book takes place about 3 weeks after the fact.
3 weeks. Here you go. Book is literally at my home.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's funded, and the books, they exist. The proofs are there. Like, there's no doubt in anybody's mind you are going to get the goods.
Yeah.
I want as many of you to get it as possible.
Which is exciting. And so this takes place just shortly after the series, after the first book that you have out there, which was a super fun book. I liked the little bit of mythology tucked in there. I like the setting in the museum. Of course, Mrs. H's art is super evocative. It's fun and fun action going on in there. But this, of course, is this the second story that you've done with the character that's finished? Do you have a whole bunch of stuff in the can? What are your plans for Asterman?
Oh yes. These books actually take place after what will eventually become Volume 1, which I have fully outlined right now. Life has been a little hectic, but once things calm down, I do intend to work with my internal artist to get that trimmed down and edited. And once we get the go ahead, start scripting it and start paying her to do the panels. The artist for the main books, her name is Fruit Loop Chan, and she, like H, is an absolute delight. So if you hear this, hello, thank you, you're awesome. So these take place after that. Geist Creed specifically was written almost like I had the sense of like a backdoor pilot. It's why Alan kind of talks the way that he does, because canonically he still doesn't know everything. So he's kind of winging it. So it lets people who don't have Volume 1 get a taste of what he can do and what he's kind of about, while also setting the stage for the more mainline books to come. And this one, which is Asterman Gaiden, a Brilliant Beach special, is really, oh god, this thing is a whole can of worms. Like even the title is pretty fun. But this is a nice way to get everybody's feet wet and see more of what he can do, especially when he's teamed up with somebody else, and this being, well, Rizerman himself.
Right. And which is super fun. But one of the other things I want to ask about too is, I know you've specifically mentioned that Asterman is properly known as Asterman Geist, which means that he's got a suffix to his name, a second part of it, but that he's intended to be the first Asterman. I understand that right?
Yes. Now I guess we can get into the whole naming convention.
Right.
With Asterman in general, I kind of take the Rider and Ultraman approach, where there is a universal title, that being Asterman, which Alan actually goes by the most, but his full title, yes, is Asterman Geist, with Geist being another word for spirit, because his main ability outside of his weapons is the ability to phase through things, which he uses in combat.
Okay.
There are at least 2 others that are planned. I have all their forms and how they get them jotted down. I have art. If people follow me, they've probably seen it. That's fine. They also go by Asterman, but they also have their own suffixes that kind of call back to different things.
Which makes sense. Is it a situation where we're looking like a legacy, or are these going to be people that are operating at the same time in different places, or how do you kind of see this folding out in your own history?
This mostly takes off of the Rider formula. In more modern seasons, there is the main Rider, which in this case would be Alan. Then somewhere down the line, you get a secondary and even tertiary, that they all operate kind of within the same faction, but their powers operate differently. They get them at different times. through different ways, and they all kind of work together to deal with the issues going on in the series. I can't really go into too much depth on the other two, but it kind of works along those lines.
Okay, so that seems somewhat similar to like the Green Lantern, for example, where it's you've got an identity that is part of a mission, and then multiple people share that identity in their own idiom. So that makes sense. I can get behind that. That makes sense to me. So now one of the questions I have about that specifically is the name Asterman. Of course, Aster is Latin for star. So do the stars factor in, or do you think it just sounds cool?
Well, the Aster and Asterman is actually a play on astral, as his powers actually stem from the power of the Astra, which is coming from his own soul, actually. Mm-hmm. And that actually plays into some of the colors you see in the suit. The green in the suit is the color of what his astral energy is. And it, much like the suit itself, kind of gives an inclination as to what direction they may go. There's a lot of lore that kind of goes into it. But just the sum and substance is much like how everyone is unique in their own way. Their circumstances and development when they awaken to this power, however they come about it, gives them their own little ability that they can kind of develop as they develop. In Alan's case, it is his phasing. In actuality, it has to do with the concept of homeostasis, where it is one state of balance. He's able to manipulate that in such a way that it leans towards more ghost-like abilities. And the secondary bit is that it allows him to neutralize the supernatural effects of those around him, which is pretty good at making him a counter for the enemies in the series, the kaijin, if you will, of Asterman, which are known as wraiths. They're not one-to-one with the mythological wraiths. That's more along the lines of, I thought the name was cool. But that is part of the sum and substance as to how that works.
Okay. Very fun. So that is available. Like I said, the link's in the description. And it features co-stars, everyone's favorite Rizerman, Neo, on Rizerman. We've talked about that a little bit, but in terms of this crossover, was that something that you guys had talked about before? How did that come about?
Are you there, buddy?
Did we lose you, Neo?
Oh, sorry. All right, about that. Well, yeah, we did discuss us crossing over at one point, and heck, I suppose we've done issues with our characters meeting and hanging out at different points, and eventually it did lead to an actual crossover story idea. Yeah. So coincidentally, Mrs. H did work on both of our comics that helped get us both out there.
Now, was that a thing where I guess who came up with this particular like iteration? Was that you or Mr. X?
I'd have to give more credit to Mr. X, as this is for the most part his story. Rizerman and some of his cast members are kind of like special guests in a sense.
Right. And one thing I think is really interesting with what seems like how it's gone. Of course, I have not read the book. I've just read what's available on the campaign, kind of the sneak peek kind of stuff. But it seems Mr. X like he did a really put a lot of work into getting to the heart of Neo's characters and being able to use them in their own space. And I thought that was a neat thing to do. What was that process like for you?
To get into how to handle Neo's characters, I obviously need to get Rizerman versus Togetherness, which I do have, and I just kind of combed over it multiple times to really kind of get how he operates, and double checking with Neo and H, who worked on the book, like how he speaks or how he tends to perform in combat, what he's able to do, what he can't do. That way, when I'm working on him in conjunction with Asterman dealing with the threat in the book, I can better use him to his fullest potential and allow him to shine and not fall into the same pitfalls that I find in a lot of team ups, whether they come in live action or comic books or TV shows, where they either fight for no reason or they feel like they're one-upping each other instead of actually working together. Like in this, not to really give anything away, it really is just them doing their best to mesh together to deal with something that neither of them can really deal with on their own at this point in time. And I know I mentioned them before, but I will mention them again to give them their just dues. I also took a lot of cues from, Common America, because they deal with way more characters at once.
Oh, yeah.
And really, whether it be the dialogue or the body language or setting like the scenes for jokes and everything, I was also rereading a lot of the books I had on hand from them at the same time that I was working on the script for Brilliant Beach Special, to really get a feel of, okay, this is the scenario I'm working with. How can I play with this to the best of my ability to give the readers more of these characters, given the time that it takes place in, have them be introduced to Shawnee, to Vanessa, to Dr. Wargo, in a way where if they didn't pick up Rizerman versus Torpedotron, they might want to do that, because now they have an idea as to what he can do and even how he can work with other characters, because as Neo mentioned, he has other characters that will appear in Rizerman proper. So now you have a better idea as to what you can expect from him moving forward on top of my own cast.
Right.
And it did take a little bit, but I think it's well worth it, and I think a lot of people will tend to enjoy it.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed was the decision that you made to feature Neo, one of Neo's main villains, right, Dr. Wargo. And what was the impetus? Why'd you decide to go that road with it rather than use some of your characters and your story to move forward? You really are taking the time to showcase Neo's creations in that.
Well, one was, again, since it is a collaboration, I went into it with the mindset of, we are collaborating. I want this to be as 50-50 as possible. That's just how I went with it in the beginning. Another thing has to do with, there are characters of mine that either are not ready yet or do not appear in this point in time. They show up later. Mm-hmm. And also kind of playing off of just the cast themselves, like Vanessa and Shawnee are reporters in their own sense. So what would be a natural way to bring them to Brimwood in a way that doesn't feel like I'm pulling something out of the nether regions? Right, some way to make it natural. Okay. Well, I took a look at how Geist Creed was, where White Claw's doing his thing. It was on tape a little bit to kind of illustrate that Brimwood is kind of a magnet for very strange things happening, and then applying that to the Rizerman cast themselves, where Rizerman is dealing with Dr. Wargo at some unknown length of time off screen, and he's doing all of these things, and it's leading him down to Florida where Brimwood is. And so Vanessa and Shawnee are basically chasing the story, and it just happens to unfold there while they happen to be there with Alan and June basically having a day off. Like 5 minutes.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah. Very cool. I dig it. So, Neil, when X was working on the story, putting it together, was there anything that he suggested that you were like, nope, we're not doing that?
I have to admit there actually wasn't a lot that he suggested that either wasn't already in the works with my characters or anything that seemed too much out of character itself. In fact, I know we kind of mentioned Shawnee and Vanessa both being reporters. Shawnee's technically a private detective, but because canonically he doesn't actually get a lot of business as a detective prior to becoming Rizerman, that's a long story in and of itself. So, he actually does kind of get by doing like camera work, since his background as a detective is like forensic photography. So he's pretty skilled at camera use. So it was actually the perfect incentive for him to work with Vanessa. Sort of undercover to look into what Orga was doing in the area.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
In
And I think
I won't spoil anything in the book, but let's just say Mr. X kind of had a good read on his character as a superhero and as sort of this sort of hapless investigator that just sort of stumbles into these crazy situations himself.
Okay. What was it like? Because you haven't had a lot of paper time yet with Rizerman. I know you've been working on the character for a long time, but as far as things that have gotten out to the public to see yet, there's still a lot that hasn't. What was it like? Kind of letting somebody else write your character in that with that kind of framework.
Well, it was certainly different. There's truth be told, there's only a handful of people I know that kind of get Rizerman and enough to write him as far as I see. I mean, honestly, I do trust Mr. X since we have interacted for a while, and since Mrs. H is also on the project X, someone who has worked with Rizerman before. Or I was actually pretty confident they could handle it. In fact, I was actually kind of impressed how well they got the character, considering how limited Rizerman's exposure has been. Outside the occasional comic book cameo in the background.
Yeah.
In fact, for a while, that's kind of how Rizerman / Shiny Cruz got recognition. He was just kind of around in other people's eyes.
Well, that's one of the things that's actually really interesting too. Is I guess what I should say rather, it's great to see that you felt like you could trust these people with your property, and if I'm understanding this right, it feels like you're really not only satisfied but pleased with how it's turned out. And that's a great place to be in. I know I've talked to some other creators who have been in similar situations and not been pleased with the end result. They thought they could trust somebody, and they turned out they were wrong. So,
yeah, I went into that with thinking, let that be anybody but me. No, it did cause things to take a little bit, but as I said, and it's really reassuring to hear Neo say that. For those that are getting the book or are thinking about picking it up, just hearing that, hopefully that does give you the confidence to check it out and see the results for yourself. There were like multiple things going into this, like especially when I was writing it at the time. Let me think. Where was it? Like, I think I was still in Miami at the time when I was writing Brilliant Beach Special. I had actually finished the script when I had come back to New England. It was actually one of the last things I did before my grandfather had passed. So once I finished everything, and after that whole kerfuffle happened, I really kind of went back, tweaked everything to the best of my ability, kind of like double checked with everybody just to make sure, okay, this is good. We're going to work with this. And again, just looking back at the people that I've taken inspiration from or tried to learn from other indie creators, not just Marketing, but even Mrs. H herself, because like I have a bunch of her books too.
Captain Orange.
I just have a big old bookshelf, just trying to get better the more I write things. Like whether it be the humor or the dialogue or the action, like I try to be very deliberate in what I try to improve and take those improvements and put them in this book. And here we are.
And, okay, and so I guess the last question I've got on this project specifically was that this, like the other mini comics that are over here, a 16-page story, right? Very trim, very efficient, right? And I will tell you, as a writer, 16 pages is hard. It is hard to keep things that short. What was the decision-making process that you guys made to decide on something that was that efficient in size? Because you're telling a whole story, beginning, middle, and end. You know, there's no like tune in next month. It's a done in one. And looking at the other books, that I could trust, that's a classic in there. But what was the decision-making process you guys went into doing that efficient type of storytelling?
This is H going, I mean, not really. For Brilliant Beat Special, it was a bit easier because I had already written Geist Creed, which was the same length. But in general, to be honest with you, in hindsight, I didn't really see it that way. I look at this type of story and I look at it as if I'm in a way writing an episode of television where if this was animated, you can see it playing out virtually the same way. And so I tried to it made me really think about the pacing. Like I have this amount of pages to work with to tell this entire story. I need to figure out how does everybody get from point A to point B, exactly where they are moving, exactly what are they doing, and make the threat in a way that it is still very much a threat, despite the book's length, but that the way things go down also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So between, rereading K and a bunch of other indie books while scripting this, I did also rewatch a lot of episodes of, I want to say, this post Zordon Power Rangers, because they have the same type of pacing that I was going for, both with Geist Creed and Brilliant Beat Special, with the sort of space. So with certain panels, that's another thing. I used like a lot more panels than people are used to, but I tried to pace them and have them in size in such a way where things still feel natural despite the condensed size, so that you still get like the feeling of, if I was watching an episode there, you can feel the same way as if you were reading my book. I'm not going to say it's the easiest thing, but it's
drop me which ones you were watching.
I was watching, I want to say, it was mostly Lost Galaxy and Time Force.
Ooh.
Ooh, nice.
I'm a really big fan of Lost Galaxy. That I think was the main draw for Geist Creed. For Brilliant Beat Special, I think it was more assorted. That one, I think it's a cross between rewatching episodes of Lightspeed Rescue, Time Force, and Wild Force all at once. But what am I looking at?
I think Time Force probably had some of the best out of costume shenanigans in it.
Oh, absolutely. There was a lot of just like research to condense it, but I didn't go into it like thinking, oh God, I have 16 pages, I got to make this work. I'm more like, well, I know the story I want to tell. How do I condense it into this length and have it be good? And I think that made it a lot easier to do, especially with Geist Creed, where if you read it, I always try to have like a sense of time, like the actual span of time of everything happening is a reasonable stretch of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book it's written to fit that sense of time, really.
So what you are seeing, Mr. X, is that there is it's been a while since we got a pickle, but about 2 years ago, we had an event where we were talking about multiverses, and Mrs. H was listening and ended up drawing Spider-Man as a pickle, and then for a while, every week or every month, she would be listening and draw us a pickle based on whatever conversation we were having at the time. I have a whole list of them, and haven't seen one in a while, which is fine. Don't want to monopolize people's time, but you have yourself a Asterman gherkin.
I've turned myself into a pickle, June. I'm Pickle Alan. It's great.
Henshin gone wrong. You weren't supposed to set the device to pickle.
Oh, man. Oh, that reminds me of another thing that H did. It was something she actually worked on with another friend of mine, Wandering, for my birthday a year back, where Cynthia from Common America somehow got her wires crossed with Alan's Asterizer, and she ends up wearing his suit, and he's just horrified at the prospect. I love stuff like that. It's hilarious.
General Hybrid says, Mr. X, if you like Power Rangers, you should check out the anime Love After World Domination. It's a fun show.
Oh, it absolutely is. I'm way ahead of you.
Oh, yeah.
I had not heard of it until now. I love the title. I will say that much. It's a great title. So, okay, let's change gears just a little bit, as I don't want to leave without it. Neo, you are a participant in a crowdfunding campaign that is going on right now, and I think it ends this week. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But it is Tales to Aspire, and I thought I had it all ready to share here, but I don't. I started talking and I got the thing wrong. But that is one Rizerman story and 3 other guys who I'm not as familiar with. But that is also funded, and everything. But tell me a little bit about what this project is and how you got involved.
Well, this was a project that has been in the makings for quite a while. It's an anthology comic that harkens back to a lot of the more traditional superhero stories that a lot of people feel kind of fell by the wayside in modern times, and we each basically tell a different superhero story based on like our particular favorite genres and such. And I thought, at the time, it'd be a good way to showcase more Rizerman. Yeah, so, it's been a heck of a grind trying to get the story put together, but we finally get on it.
So is that a situation where they approached you? So is that a situation where they approached you, or you approached them for participation?
For the most part, the main writer came to me since we did know each other through different other different indie creators at the time, and I was one of the few that still stuck around because this Rizerman story was pretty much made from scratch for this anthology. It does feature characters and content in Rizerman that would come later down the road, but enough major points for each in the story that I thought would work here.
Now, the other thing I want to remember here, you have for a long time been working on stuff with an artist named Felipe. Am I remembering that right? Is his work in this book?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Felipe is my main artist for this story, and he's even done a lot of the initial Rizerman and promotional pics I've used to showcase the character in the past, including like a 3-page demo comic of him stopping a group of bank robbers.
I've seen, and I remember seeing that. And one of the fun things about his style is it's very, I mean, I'm going to say cartoony, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's got this classic animation feel to it that I don't think people use anymore, and I think it's sad that it doesn't get used enough.
Oh yeah, Felipe is a total aficionado. I don't know when it comes to when it comes to like classic manga art style, and to some extent even classic, even the I don't know why I keep saying classic so much, the Hanna-Barbera art style for a lot of the early superhero and cartoon works that they used to do. In fact, if I was able to get him on here, he knows way more Tokusatsu content than I do. He might be a match for Metal up there in terms of knowledge.
Knowing stuff. Yeah, could be. Definitely could be. And one of the in terms of talking about the that old manga, old anime, and Hanna-Barbera, the intersection, it's really, you look at just how much of an influence American artistry, cartoon artistry was impacted on early anime stuff like Astro Boy, right? And how much those types of form shapes fit in there, and it's really easy to see Felipe stuff fitting right alongside that kind of thing, right? The Astro Boy, Kibble the Lion, that very cartoony stuff that just really, really fits in with it. So I think it'd be exciting to see that project. I have not yet, but Payday is coming up. But I have not yet backed Tales to Inspire, but I definitely want to see what you've done with that. So that is also, the link is also in the description down below. I'm not familiar with the other creators, so I can't say what I think of their stuff. I've seen them, a couple of them around Twitter and all, but they're not people who's I've really crossed paths with too much. But I think if they're willing to pick Neo out, then they probably know a thing or two about a thing or two. So that's my opinion on that. Well, I think that I have had all of my questions answered. I know it's a little short for one of my shows, but I think, when you're done talking, maybe it's a good time to wrap things up. Do you guys have anything you want to close with before we call it done?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's been an honor being on the show. Thank you very much for having me and having Neo. And thank everybody for watching, for backing, supporting. It means the absolute world to me. I hope that with this book that I will have earned your patronage in the future. And if you can as well, this is something that H also likes to do. We do also have tiers to sponsor younger readers in the community, because as time has gone on, kids don't really have much to do that is more tailored to them, so we can kind of spread the love a little bit. That'd be greatly appreciated. But just above all else, just thank you all for taking the time in times like these. It is really priceless. So the fact that you decided to share that with me, with Rhys, Metal, and Neo, it just means a whole lot. It really does. So thank you.
Neo, any last words?
With a bit of smart arts and a lot of hearts, you too can be a brilliant star.
Oh, and Metal.
But seriously, it was great to be in here, folks. And I appreciate you all come on by to see us all.
Absolutely. So thank you. And we'll definitely have to let me know if new stuff's coming out. Love to feature it again sometime, for sure.
Will do.
Yep. Metal, how about you? You have anything you want to tell the folks at home about?
Sure. Actually, I'm just going to drop my Fables registration link where you can join that website as a fan of mine, or just in general. But I get a cooler border the more people who sign up through my link. So I like to brag to people. But you go on there, and I actually have something that's kind of like in the Henshin, kind of like the Mahou Shoujo magical girl category too. You could go read the Bodacious Bikini Battle Babes of British Bay in a slightly more safe for work format on Fable. So it forced me to censor some things, apparently. So bright lights do the trick. Okay, and also, if you like my art, you can always just buy it. I will do OC character art. I'll draw your comic for it if you're willing to pay up front. I'm just saying, I'm available.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's true. He actually did the cover for the as yet unfinished Force of Good and Evil manga-sized Force of Good and Evil, which someday I will get formatted and ready to go. But today is not that day. Until then, you can go check out forceofgoodandevil.net and read the entire archive, except for all the amazing stuff that Mrs. H has done that is available only on Webtoon. But you can get a link from there at forceofgoodandevil.net. So that's it for the show this week. Next week, I believe we are going to be doing a Doug TeNapel reading group. But I don't have all of that laid out, and we haven't 100% agreed on the book, and so that's going to depend on who is willing to come on shorter notice than I would hoped for. So, until next time, get out there and read some comics, and you guys have a great week. So, bye from here.
Keep on shining, folks.
Bye-bye.
Keep on shining. I like it. Later.